Nobody sees great imagination by looking at the ground. But when you look at the sky, you can see something different every time you look at it.
Morning, I'm Bill Harrison, the president of the EAA Warbirds of America. We're talking this morning about this little helicopter behind me, which is the Hiller Hornet.
I got a love for the old airplanes and always have wanted to fly them. And then when I found that I was able to do that, I started out with a T6 and worked my way through a T6 and a Mustang and then a Sea Fury and the ME-109 and just a little bit of everything.
Okay, and you were the owner of the plane? Or
No, I used to be the owner of the airplane. I found this one at a duster strip in Dothan, Alabama in 1978.
I was born in 1933, the depths of the Depression. My mother and father they both worked at the bank in Waco, Texas. Neither one of them had a college degree.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
And Pearl Harbor was on a Sunday, and my mother and father went with me, and we went to church. And after church, we decided to go to the movie. And we went to the Orpheum Theater in Waco, Texas. And when we walked out of the Orpheum, there was a newsboy on the street hollering, selling extras that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. My father went to school at night and on weekends, and he subsequently got enough college education to where he got a commission and went in the Navy in World War II. And I remember the day that he left for the Navy, October the 11th, 1942, standing on the railway platform in Waco, Texas, watching that train disappear. I break up just thinking about it. I had my little sailor suit on, and my mom was there crying. To me, war was the 10 soldiers, and if you knocked one down, you picked it up and they played again. It doesn't work that way. Well, during the war in Waco, Texas, it was probably like most other relatively small towns. It went on. Most everybody had somebody who was gone. A lot of families had gold stars in their windows for somebody who was dead. I didn't know any better. Growing up during World War II, I was really focused on the patriotic aspect. I still am. I get tears in my eyes, and when they play taps and all the things that are going on now and have been going on during my lifetime. When my dad came home from the service, he knew a gentleman in Waco named Skeet Eason, who had a Piper Cub, and it was right, I guess, 1946 or 47, and he took me for a ride. And I thought that was great. So I was hooked. And I always figured that I would learn to fly. I told my dad if he asked me what I wanted to do, I said, I want to go to the Naval Academy and be a Navy pilot. He said, there's no future in that, son. In those days, you believed your dad. They never told you anything except the truth, right? So I said, oh, well, what do you think I ought to do? And he said, why don't you be a doctor? I thought, okay, I'll try that. When I started to college in 1950, the Korean War, I started in September, the war started in June before that. And everybody was worried about getting drafted and not being able to complete school. But they would give me a delay to finish my training after medical school. So I had to study while I really didn't know whether to study or pack, because I had orders to active duty all the way through medical school. And they were in the Army, and the reason I picked the Army at that time was because the Navy didn't like me. And my commanding officer was a Navy admiral. And we had the Air Force right there with us, and then the Army, and it was all together. So I would go fly with anybody that I could ride with. I started taking lessons, and there was a little airport grass strip. We had some of the early Cessna 150s. So I went out and started taking lessons, and I soloed after 4 hours. Remember, I was flying out of a grass strip, uncontrolled, didn't have to worry about airplanes or people. All I had to worry about was getting it on the ground. I thought, man, I've got this made. Every year in aviation, I've learned how little I know. Finally got enough time and money to work at it seriously, and I got my pilot's license in 1962. And that was when I joined the EAA.
Bill is a great aviation enthusiast, not only about Warbirds and him giving the B-17 to EAA, supporting the movement. He's a very sincere individual, soft-spoken, and which is evident, and loves people.
Now, I think it is fair to say that there's never been an airplane he didn't like, nor one that he wouldn't be interested in flying. I think that's part of what gave him such a love of aviation and a love of trying to work with the museum to make it all that it could be.
If I summarized Bill Harrison's contributions to EAA and EAA Warbirds of America, the list is very long, but the major things that we think of for Bill would be, of course, the B-17 is the foremost of his legacy.
You know, I met him in the course of flying. Learned about from the B-17 effort what he'd done and how he brought that to EAA. The breadth of Bill's contributions, the extent to which I think he's shown amazing persistence and dedication and leadership. And for many, people younger than he, like myself, he's been a mentor. He's been somebody that I admire, I look up to, I learn from, take counsel from. Bill's just made incredible contributions in so many ways that I hope they could be captured and shared with an audience that would appreciate it.
You have the Eagle Hangar, the National Warbird Operators Conference. He was involved with the donation of the Corsair. Bill has done so much as a director. I served as president of Warbirds of America, and the foundation that he laid for the rest of us coming along and years later, and he continues to work with the Warbird Board tirelessly. We have a lot to thank Bill for.
I truly loved practicing medicine. When I put myself into something, I generally put 100% or more. And it had a good career in medicine. I did well in surgery. I was able to help people. Got great satisfaction from helping people.
Well, he knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't know just the Warbirds. This is the thing you got to remember. There's some people on the board that never have the opportunity to serve maybe on the EAA board or on the big picture. Bill has served every inch of it, top, bottom, side, movement, coming up, hard times, good times, accidents, insurance problems, you name it. He's been there, so he's got the experience. Flying is his love, and been able to survive it like I have. And that rascal called me one day and he said, "You got to come over here. I've got this dog. I got this schnauzer that you just got to have him." Little black dog. And said the people wanted to put him to sleep. They were moving to California and said they wasn't allowed to have a dog where they're going, so they want to put him away. Well, that hit Bill's heart. You don't put no dog away. Bill lives on a grass strip that most people, I don't think would go in there in much, but I had a Navajo, so I went in there went out there with half gas. And he finally taught me to come. I flew out there to Oklahoma and landed on his strip and spent the night. And it was nice to watch everybody standing around the next day wanting to see me come out of there. But me and my dog come home.
As Bill has fought for various causes and issues over the years, he's found a way to do it persistently, delicately, pleasantly, but none of those words overshadow the fact that one didn't know where Bill stood. And then of all things, it turned out the P-51 that I own was a P-51 that he had in fact raced, and if only for 1 year, but it had had an interesting racing career with Ed Weiner.
I grew up in the 30s, and that was the height of, the golden age of air racing of various types. And I knew what was going on. I built models and so forth. But then when I got started in aviation for myself, and I just had the real bug to go to the races. And all of my friends with whom I had been flying fighters in the Warbird movement, I thought I was crazy. At that time, nobody was racing. But when I took a stock airplane out there and, took third in the bronze race, and you're all by yourself in the airplane, you got a lot of people around you, sometimes close. But nevertheless, you are trying to do your very best job to get the most out of that airplane without tearing it up. And I think that's for people who have a sense of adventure and a sense of accomplishment, it gives you both. I think they figured if Bill Harrison can do it, they sure can do it, which is fine with me. I don't care if it was, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. As I get older, I know that sooner or later I will have to quit, and that's okay. I have done things that other people don't even have the guts to dream about. And it's hard to even think back to all the things because some of them were just part of me. And I just feel like I have been very, very fortunate to have lived the life I've lived.
He's the kindest, most generous, sensitive person that I've ever met. He married me with 4 children under the age of 9 and raised them. They think of him as their father. And he thinks of them as his children. He has been a wonderful father. He's a wonderful grandfather. He loves animals. He loves. He doesn't even squash spiders. He's that kind and sensitive. He's an excellent pilot. To watch Bill fly or do surgery, either one, he moves slowly. His hands never go fast. They're very methodical, and you just feel that he is in control. And it's never panicked, never, even in emergencies, which I was in plenty of them with him. He never loses control. He's a wonderful person.
Most of all, I would like to thank the woman who, for the last 15 years, has allowed me to have two very jealous mistresses, one aviation and one medicine, and has even been able to share my passion for aviation and particularly old Warbirds, my wife Charlotte. Thank you all very much.
Bill, as this film gets wrapped up, just remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you. We're with you always, and thank you. Keep them flying.
I'm Bill Harrison. I'm going to welcome you to this section of the Warbirds in Review. I think everybody pretty well knows what Warbirds in Review is now. We started, 5 years ago, wasn't it? 10 years ago? Well, time goes by. But this has been a great addition to the Warbird activities at Oshkosh. What we do is have people, we're talking about airplanes, but we're really talking about people. And we have the people here who brought this airplane out of the boneyard, one of the boneyards, restored it, and now they're going to keep it in condition for you to see and to fly. There was a question about whether it was 3-blade or 4-bladed prop. What's this one? 3? You'll find out in a little bit what the difference is and which ones were there. So let me introduce our participants today. Let's bring the chairs over here, guys. Danny Bolin, who is another one of our moderators over here, the master senior big high mogul moderator, to whom I'm ultimately responsible, is going to help us with the questions. What I'd like to do when we get to the question part, let me know that you have a question and I'll walk over to you, or Danny will walk over to you, and let's say the question out loud, because I got the feeling a while ago that most of you really didn't hear the questions, you heard the answers. So we'll try to repeat the question, and if that's too redundant for you, you just have to accept it. I want to introduce these gentlemen. On the far side, we have the owner of the airplane, John O'Connor. John Lane, who was in charge of the restoration. Frank Arafat, who, like me, went to El Salvador and brought out Corsairs. And he had a little more fun. Well, I had more fun with mine than you did, because I flew it back. Anyway, I'm going to ask John O'Connor to lead off the discussion. You guys can talk about any part of the airplane or its operational history you like, and the questions can be the same way. Okay? Let's go.
Thank you, Bill. My name's John O'Connor, and I fly out of Brickridge Airport.
John, closer to your mouth.
My name's John O'Connor. I fly out of Brickridge Airport, L-22, about 15 miles west of Midway Airport. I fly an SNJ-5 out of there. And a little bit about my background. I'm a commercial instrument pilot, but basically I'm, Oshkosh lifetime member that started flying here in a 152 that I rented. And then I went up the chain to a T-34, a T-28, an SNJ, P-51 Mustang. And this is the love of my life. I wanted one of these ever since I was a kid. And I finally got one thanks to Frank Arafat that got it out of El Salvador in 1972, and John Lane, who worked on it and put this beautiful bird together, spending 10 years in his shop in Idaho. And it's just gorgeous. I'd like to talk a little bit about why we named the plane Lindbergh. If you look on the side of it, you see we named it Colonel Slim Lindbergh. A lot of people didn't know that Lindbergh was given the rank of colonel. They also didn't know his real nickname. It wasn't so much Lucky Lindy, it was Slim. The other thing a lot of people don't know is that he was given a firm kill in one of these aircraft and two more that were not documented because he was supposed to have been just a coordinator and a liaison assistant. He wasn't supposed to be active combat. And President Roosevelt made sure that those other kills were not documented. But MacArthur said, let the guy keep flying. And here's the interesting part. You get John Lane here. His father flew P-38s and P-39s and P-47s. Well, John's father was an ace in the P-38s, and he knows for a fact that Lindbergh had two more kills. So that makes Lindbergh an ace, and that was never documented. So me being half German from my cousin right over there, and my uncle, my mother, with Gerbrand, and half Irish, I figured that Lindbergh really needed to be given some credit for his war efforts, because a lot of people, we really don't trust other nationalities. We think that we can't separate our heritage from our allegiance to our country. And I just think that this is a great example that even though you're German or even though you're another nationality, once you sign in here and you become a citizen, that's your homeland. And that Lindbergh proved it. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is the ingenuity of our working men, our working soldiers, Marines in fact, in the field. You look at this bomb rack, you think that was made by Chance Vault or Goodyear. This is a Goodyear airplane. Marines came up with it because when this aircraft was originally brought to them, it was kind of a cast-off from the Navy because they weren't sure how to fly the thing, and some of the other people may talk about the enhancements that made it easier to fly in carriers. But when you look at this, it's kind of crude and rudimentary. It was designed by just the mechanics in the field, because they wanted this capacity. And then you get a guy like Lindbergh that says, geez, I think we can make that even better. I can put 4,000 pounds of bombs on that. That made that the first fighter bomber of the war. Lindbergh took a 2,000-pound bomb. This is only 1,000 pound. This is the depth charge bomb. Lindbergh took 2,000-pound bomb, imagine what that looked like, and put 1,000-pound bombs on each wing. That's pretty impressive bomb load for this little plane. So that's why we gave it the name Lindbergh, because he did so much with this. And he did many other things. With the P-38 and with this aircraft, he taught the kids how to fly these planes, lean a peak, run the engines a little bit leaner, get some miles out of them so they could get home. A lot of airmen wouldn't have gotten home without his techniques. I used a little bit of that 4 weeks ago, flying from Key West to Honduras via Cancun and back. Well, if you know anything about an SNJ-5, they don't have long legs. So you want to be careful on how you're running your fuel. And you think of Lindbergh when you're over the Gulf of Mexico. There's a lot of oil down there, but it's not any good for me. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the paint job. This paint job hasn't been seen in a while. The fabric hasn't been seen in a while. It's fabric wings. It's about 1,100 pounds lighter than the F4, which many of the pilots like better. We have a very famous aviator in Chicagoland, Chuck Downey. He was the youngest pilot in World War II. And Chuck had 250 hours in this. And he said he liked this better than any of the other ones because it was so light and nimble. So it's kind of funny. The other aircraft, the 4 and the 5 and the 7, they're more sophisticated. This is more hands-on. But this was a sweetheart to fly. So that's the one thing I want to talk about. And I'm going to hand this back over to Bill. And then Bill's going to introduce the two men that know much more than I do about this aircraft.
Thank you, John. I think that we really appreciate your bringing the airplane here. That's a big part of Oshkosh. And most people don't understand that this is a true labor of love for John and everybody else who brings an airplane to Oshkosh. It's at their own expense, and they bring it here so that you can learn something about military aviation and our heritage, and we do appreciate it. I will second what they said about this. This is the FG-1D built by Goodyear because Chance Vaught couldn't keep up with production. But I agree that this airplane flies much better than the F4U4 or 5. I've never flown the 7. The 7 had hydraulically boosted controls, so it supposedly comes back and flies like this. But I love this airplane. It flies great. I think we ought to talk just a little bit about getting it out. Do you want to talk about getting it out of El Salvador, Frank?
My name is Frank Arafat, and having this airplane here at Oshkosh is a dream come true because going way back, when I was a young boy, I've been an airplane nut ever since my early years. I built a lot of models of this airplane, and I wound up being a Navy pilot, and I caught the very end of the guys that flew these. They were getting out just as I got to the squadron. But so I've had a long love affair with the Corsair, and the early model, the Dash 1 in particular, I think it's the prettiest of all the Corsairs, primarily because of the cowling. The cowling is bolted directly to the ears on the cylinders, and since the engine is round, the cowling is round. There's no bulges or air scoops or anything like you see on the later versions. Anyway, I saw an opportunity in a trade-a-plane classified ad back in '72, and I could get down to El Salvador. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I could get down to El Salvador, the capital city of San Salvador, very inexpensively because of my airline job, and I could speak the language. So I thought, man, if there's an opportunity for me to get a Corsair, this is it. So I went down there, and it's a long, involved story, but the bottom line was that a year later, I had made 7 trips down there and basically took the airplane all apart and crated it. I hired a couple of the enlisted men on the base. They had a dual-use airfield at Ilopango, the main commercial base or commercial airport in San Salvador. Anyway, they had the military side, and I hired a couple of the enlisted guys to help me take the thing apart and crate it, and then we shipped it back to Los Angeles on a freighter. Came into Long Beach in December of '73, and then I went and finished up my NP license training, and then over the years, of course, I got married and raised a family with my wife, Kathleen, the namesake of this airplane, and of course had the airline job, which basically changes your 30-day month into a 14-day month as far as your time at home. So all the usual things that a husband and father and homeowner and has to do, I'd have to compress into 2 weeks, and so that puts a big load on your spouse, and it really creates a time crunch for you. And so I made progress on the airplane, but it was real slow. I did a lot of parts chasing, and amassed a pretty decent cache of spare parts. And the airplane was not in serious condition in terms of damage or corrosion. When I went down there, I was one of the first guys to show up, and it was I had my pick of about a dozen airplanes that were in all different stages of deterioration or corrosion or cannibalization. And so I looked it over pretty well, and this is the one that I picked. This particular plane is a late production FG-1D. The bureau number is 92489. That's the serial number. And on the FG-1Ds, they only went, in fact, the production ended at 92701. So this one was a little bit, there were only a little bit more than 200 of them built after this one. It was in North Island out at San Diego in a pool status, waiting to go overseas when the war ended. And its service really, its American service, only entailed a tour of duty at the Naval Air Station at Floyd Bennett Field there, just across the bay from JFK in New York. And then from there it went into storage down in Litchfield Park in Arizona, and then from there it was part of a batch of 20 airplanes that were sent to El Salvador as part of the Mutual Assistance Pact, or Mutual Aid Program as it became later. And they used them for a while, and this airplane may have flown in that soccer war that they had down there between Honduras and El Salvador, during which Corsairs and Mustangs mixed it up, and there were several airplanes shot down. A national hero of Honduras is a gentleman by the name of Major Soto, and he shot down 2 Corsairs and a Mustang, all El Salvador. El Salvador had Mustangs and Corsairs. Anyway, to get back to this one, I kept it. I kept working on it and kept it all together for all those years. And eventually, when I retired from the airlines, I thought, now I've got enough time to finish this thing. And so I started working on it more. But I still had all the responsibilities I had before, except for not having a job anymore. But I still didn't have enough time, and I realized that I would not live long enough to finish this thing. So I thought, I had developed a relationship with John Lane, and he was already a well-known restorer to me. And I thought, well, I'm gonna. And then his shop is in a part of the country that I had flown over a lot of times during my airline years, and I was intrigued by the area, and I liked to fish, and so I thought, I can kill several birds with one stone by hauling my airplane up to John Lane and let him finish it. So that's what I did, and that was in the summer of 2002, and. Since then, we've become good friends, he and his wife Nancy and I, and their family, and my family knows them all. Anyway, the thing has been an adventure, another phase of the adventure of getting this airplane to Oshkosh here and now. And so they worked on it, and it came closer and closer. And John is as much a historian as he is a restorer, as a mechanic, and a pilot as well. So it was an ideal fit. And then it got to the point where I couldn't justify going on financially, and I decided that the time had come to sell the airplane, which was less than a year ago. And so I just kind of put the word out a little bit, and several people came by and eventually John O'Connor came into my life, and we went into negotiations, as they say, and so he became the owner. And that got the airplane, that he provided the final push to get through the 10% barrier. Most, I'm sure of you know, have heard about the last 10% takes 90% of the time, but that's the barrier that we were up against, and then the airplane was ready. There was a big push here in the very late stages of the completion of the airplane, and then John flew it from South Central Idaho to Oshkosh, and with a couple of stops. We early on had an agreement as to what the plane would look like, and it's identical or nearly identical as you can make it to the one that is in the National Air and Space Museum at Dulles in Washington, and that airplane is called Sunsetter, and this variation of the tricolor paint job was the last of the. There was several color schemes that were used on that airplane up until the time the Navy changed to the all blue paint job, and this is the last of the tricolor paint jobs, and it's the one that would more apply to Corsairs operated by the Marine Corps in late '43 and into early '44, and it's my favorite. The bomb rack, that's a story in itself, but I'll let John tell you about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frank. John, before you get started, how many veterans do we have here? All veterans, stand up. Give them a hand. That's why we still speak English and we're able to do things like this. Thank you very much. If you haven't done so, sign up. The veteran sign up is over in that little building that has the Warbird patch on the side, and you can sign up, and it's worth a hat. So you know everybody wants hats. I don't know why. I have 1,000 hats. Probably everybody else does too. But each one of them is a treasure because it's not because it's a hat, because where you got it, who gave it to you, or what it is. So they are important. But that's where you go get your hat. So do it. We do have John Lane here. You are the primary restorer, right? You're in Idaho, and in between fishing, you work on airplanes, right?
I wish that was the case. I don't get to do much fishing anymore, although we do occasionally up at my wife's family's ranch. But my name is John Lane. I the owner-operator, co-conspirator with my wife Nancy. They're called Air Power Unlimited in Jerome, Idaho. We've done a lot of different airplanes over the years. We've seemed to have gotten to be kind of the Corsair gurus, or sort, and that's in the eye of the beholder and not me. But Frank first approached me about doing this. I had met Frank. This is not my first time to Warbirds in Review either, but by the same token, we brought a Corsair here in 2003, and we were fortunate enough to win Grand Champion with it. But Frank, along the way, had judged some of my stuff. He was also a Warbird judge, and which is really a compliment to have a Warbird judge want to come to me and have me restore an airplane. So I felt very, very proud of that. But he approached me with all the things that he told you. He wasn't going to live long enough to finish this, and so he was, kind enough to start hauling his stuff up. We started working on it, and it's taken a while. Obviously he was on a budget at the time too, so it's those things take time and so on. And it just it's a labor of love, is what it is. We get into these airplanes and you can't stop. You got to go get into them deep and make sure they don't have any corrosion or issues of repair or disrepair that need to be addressed. And so we started taking the things that we couldn't do, like the engine and the propeller and instruments and so on, and started getting all that stuff sent off to different overhaul facilities that could handle that we trust in their ability to get things done. And so that's how it basically started out. It's taken, well, about 6 years. Huh? It's 8. Yeah. How time flies when you're, yeah. And we've just really put a lot of effort into it. And then towards the end of when we couldn't really go anymore because Frank was in a position where he couldn't afford to do it, we backed off, and then John came in and picked up, and off we went. But the extent of doing the restoration and the push to get it here was so important because we had committed to do our portion of it for John O'Connor and also for Frank, because I mean and for the airplane. But we wanted to get it here. We wanted to show it to you folks. We wanted to have it on display. We committed to do it. We were part of the program, and we struggled getting it here a little bit on the way out. I got to just tell you a little quickie. On the way out over Laramie, Wyoming, it started running pretty rough. So I didn't know exactly what was wrong, and decided I was going to go on to North Platte and get fuel. But at that point, I'm talking to Center, and I told him I had a little rough engine event here. And about that time, it started running rougher. So I knew that I was totally committed to get down. And I was at 17,500 feet, so I just started a slight descent into Cheyenne. So I got into Cheyenne and got off, and long story short, we had 3 airplanes shuttling parts back and forth, changed magnetos, changed our induction vibrator that actually excites the magneto because the engine doesn't turn over fast enough for the magneto to really develop the spark that needs to start it. So it takes an induction vibrator, or in other words, a shower of sparks to excite it to get it started. We changed all that. We checked all the ignition system all the way from the switch all the way to the magneto, changed all that. Nothing made any difference. So, and the airplane wouldn't start. So we were dead in the water, basically. And the last thing we did between the day and a half that we were doing all of this, headed this way, was the distributor that's on the right side. It's a big round gray thing that's on the nose case, and it had a broken rotor in it. Well, that's not something that we would even think about because that came from the overhaul facility that way. And first time that I'd ever seen anything like that. And so we turned around and replaced that, and we rented a jet to come in and bring the parts in at that point. The airport had been closed at Cheyenne from 9 o'clock in the morning till 11:30 because the Frontier Days are going on in Cheyenne the whole week, and the Thunderbirds were putting on an air display between that time. So we couldn't leave or come out in an airplane to go run our parts. So now we're a little stuck, so the jet got there at 11:45, just after the airspace opened again. So we had it, had everything pretty much changed out and running in just a little over an hour. So I had so much confidence, I went ahead and suited up in the flight suit, got in the airplane, and was ready to go, lit it, everything worked perfect. I just put my helmet on and went. So, and it purred like a kitten the whole way. Stopped in Des Moines, got some more fuel just because I would be a little shy. It messed up my fuel stop, in distance. So I stopped there. That way I wouldn't have, if I had a problem in the air here, as far as not being able to put down at Oshkosh for some reason, then I'd have reserve. So that's what I did. But basically, it's just been, I can't say it's been a lot of fun. It's just been a lot of work. There's a lot of fun that comes with it, the end result of it, because if it's, our crew, I just can't say enough about my people. They're just fantastic. My wife, I get a little choked up about this because there's a lot of emotion in this. We get so dedicated to do what we have to do. Sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees, you know. And what I mean by that is I have a tendency to neglect her too. You know, she's my wife, but she's also my partner, not only in marriage but in our business. And the whole thing is we just give up so much. And the last 2 months have been just nothing but a thrash. 7 days a week. Even my crews have come in on the weekends. Some of them couldn't do it. You know, they have families and obligations and everything. But we said we'd be here. We said we'd make it happen. And we're here. And we're real proud to have you. Be here for you.
Thank you very much, John. I think we have time for a few questions. Who's got? I have one question. This one has an updraft carburetor.
Negative.
You changed it? Okay. That I was going to ask you if it had torched yet, because that was one of the problems with this one, was that the fuel had to flow up, and it sometimes dripped down, which, you know, it responded to gravity, and they would torch on startup. But anyway, questions?
Got one here, Bill.
Okay. We're going to repeat the questions.
Yes, sir. Thanks, first of all, for a wonderful presentation, and you men are really dedicated. We really appreciate it. Question about combat consequences. With the hinged wing, hinged wing points there, if the plane took a direct hit from either a cannon shell or flak, wouldn't that be a very vulnerable point, and did that perhaps often lead to downing craft being hit right there?
Anybody want to take
answer
that
it? I'll
on?
give you my opinion real quick too, but obviously, I mean, there's some airplanes were designed at the wing fold hinge, lower hinge fittings and stuff, that if you did take a hit, that the wing would stay in place. This one will not.
One thing about it, if you'll notice it, John, on the wing attach point, the bolt that holds the wing down runs horizontal, not vertical. So it's not as weak as it looks like.
The excuse me. There's a well-known film clip from the European theater of it was taken from above of a B-24 Liberator. It looks to be it's a late production all bare aluminum Liberator, looked brand new, and somebody in a plane that was flying above it happened to be filming that airplane as they were approaching the target or in the vicinity of the target, and it takes a direct hit right in the wing root between the fuselage and the number 3 engine, and the wing literally, it just flies up. It took the hit between the engine and the fuselage in the spar and takes out the spar, and of course then the wing just flies away and the plane of course drops. Every airplane, I don't care if it's a B-52 or a Wright Flyer, there are places on the airplane, generally the wings or the tail or maybe even in the engine, where if the plane takes a hit there, its flying is over. And of course, in the Corsair, if you hit it in the spar and that wing hinge point is integral with the spar, that would be a vulnerability. But it's not unlike any other airplane. If a Mustang takes a hit in the spar, the wing's coming off, and I mean a serious large caliber hit in the wing.
Don't they call that the golden bullet?
Right, golden BB.
Golden BB, whatever. Do we have other questions? Right there.
I think everybody's familiar with the problems they had in qualifying the Corsair in the landing phase. What structural changes did you make to the series to get it to be carrier qualified?
Can you hear the question? When the Corsairs first came on duty, they had problems teaching landings in them, and he wants to know if there were changes made to make it easier to land.
the problems that they addressed during the time that the Corsair was having problems qualifying aboard the ship, they weren't what you'd call structural changes. The plane was strong enough. There's no question about the strength of the airplane, but the problem was visibility for the pilot and the oleo struts. The rebound on the oleo struts was such that on the hard landing element of a carrier landing, the strut would rebound like any oleo strut would do, but it would rebound with gusto to the point where the airplane would bounce way too much, and that's not good for a carrier plane. So they changed the internals on the oleo to the point where if you ever see a picture of or see a Corsair in flight with a gear extended, the oleo is fully extended. It looks a little strange because the strut is so long to the point where they have to have a cable, a braided steel cable, that when you retract the gear, it draws the landing gear up so it'll fit in the well. If that cable breaks, then the gear is not going to fit into the well. But at any rate, they had to change the strut to basically not give any rebound, but still absorb the shock. And the other was several measures to increase pilot visibility, raising the tail wheel leg or to the tail wheel strut. If you look at it back there, you'll see there's an extension. It looks like about 6 inches to get the fuselage in a more level attitude. And then also they raised the seat and they put a bubble canopy on it. And so they eventually got to the point where it started replacing the Hellcat squadrons toward the end of the war. And then, of course, it was all Corsairs in Korea. I was a carrier pilot.
What?
Oh no, there's about 35 of these things. It varies quite a lot, but the ballpark number to remember, there's a little over 100 Corsairs left. About a third are flying, about a third are in museums, and the other third are restoration projects.
Other questions?
I was a Navy pilot, and I made a couple of hundred landings on the carrier. Oh yeah, they had the Brits, because their backs were against the wall. They got the Corsair. They got about 1,200 Corsairs, and they developed the turning approach to the point where there was no straightaway. They would be always looking over the low wing on a left base approach, and no straightaway. You'd keep sight of the LSO up until the last second, and it'd give you the cut. You'd roll the wings level and hit the deck.
Great. Question?
Could you comment on the change from the 3-blade propeller to the 4-blade propeller, and also on the bomb rack that was kind of jury-rigged for this aircraft?
Well, I'll do the propeller, and I'll let John Lane do the bomb rack. But the propeller, the Corsair was the first single-engine fighter to use the R2800 engine, and that was a very powerful engine, 2,100 horses for takeoff without water injection. And so they needed a big prop to absorb that power. And the later model, the F4U4, they went to a 4-bladed prop because there was still some gain to be had from the power available from that engine. It's interesting to note that the F4U4's performance numbers are better than the F4U1, and the F4U4 engine, the power settings, the horsepower produced at various power settings are not much different than what this does, except for the full power point, and then it's only 200 or 300 horsepower more. The point is that the big difference, or the big performance, the lion's share of the performance gain in the F4U4 was due to the propeller. It's even a heavier airplane.
Okay. John, did you want to comment?
Yes, the the bomb rack and the bomb configuration that we have back here. The Marines, during their phases in the in the Pacific, they needed to carry a much larger bomb load than they were able to. And so what they did was they configured, this thing had a centerline drop fuel tank on it. And that was their mode of supporting. So they used that in jerry-rigged pipes and fittings and welded brackets, and somebody came up with the concept to build all this stuff in to carry up to a 1,000-pound bomb at the time, which most of the bomb rolls were, using 500 to 1,000-pound bombs. And so the grunts on the ground were the ones that developed it. Later, because there was so much need for it, they actually went to Brewster Aircraft Company and said, and nothing against Brewster, but they couldn't build airplanes very well, so they could build the bomb racks. But that's my consensus anyway. But and I'll probably get a little rebuttal of that. But anyway, so the Marine Corps asked them for help, or the Department of Navy said, can you build these racks for us? We've got the basic concept. So they sent the thing back to the States. They jigged it up, and this is what they came up with. So this is actually a replication of the Brewster bomb rack. Now, we were able to attain one. The gentleman's over here. He was, anyway. Mitch, he's waving. We attained a bomb rack that he brought out of New Zealand. And to our knowledge, it's the only one left in the world. So there are no more Brewster bomb racks. And we borrowed that rack to replicate it 100%. Now that bomb rack has some corrosion issues and stuff, and probably should never be used for any kind of display or usage. But we replicated it 100%, and that's what we've basically done. So what you see here is an exact replication of the Brewster bomb rack that carried the 1,000-pound bombs. And later, Lindbergh was able to show that the airplane could carry much more weight than it was ever designed for.
You were talking about Brewster. Brewster did build some airplanes. The Brewster Buffalo wasn't terribly good. But for anyone who's really interested in digging, in I believe it's Nashville, Tennessee, when they closed down the plant at the end of the war, they pulled all the Brewster airplanes into a pit, covered them up with dirt, and it's all covered. And it's there somewhere if you want to go digging for a Brewster Buffalo. Yes. Are all the Corsairs that John has restored flying, or are they in museums?
The answer to that is yes.
Okay, good answer.
There's one is now a static display in the Seattle Museum of Flight. That airplane spent 33 years at the bottom of Lake Washington, was recovered, and was given to us to completely restore. From the get-go, they wanted to make a flying aircraft, and so that's where we went with the airframe. And then it came along that the airplane wouldn't be flown; it would be a static display. So we ceased and desist our airworthiness side of things and went ahead and made a high static for them and so on. But all the rest of the airplanes that we've restored in our shop are all flying.
That's the Warbird motto: keep them flying. We're about to run out of time. I'll take one more really pertinent question. Yes, in the back there.
I can't hear. Go ahead.
I noticed that there's only one spar that connects in the wing folding mechanism. Did that create any structural issues?
He says there's only one spar from the wing folding mechanism. Does that create a structural problem?
From my standpoint, as a restorer, it has not. I mean, it's a very strong point with this airplane. It's an impressive. This is built like a bridge structure, and I mean, this thing is just helfer stout. And I mean, I don't know any other way to put it, but it's just a very, very strong piece, and it's never been an issue. We've never found any major cracks anywhere in them. even from all the carrier landings and stuff that they made. They came up with the outside on the wing. They had some problems with the wings, and they had some problems with the underbelly after a certain amount of carrier landings that were stressed on them. They started putting a strap under them, and they, you know, it didn't make any difference how much, you know, how old the airplane was. If you had a certain amount of carrier landings, they went ahead and put the straps on them all, just because it helped beef them up, because it was a little bit of a weak area, but it was between the spar area underneath and the landing gear. So
it would fly through a brick house.
It would.
Very, very, very tough airplane. We're really delighted that you brought this airplane here and shared it with us. I know I speak for all of you that it's really great to have this kind of participation and hear about the airplane, the recovery, the restoration. Let's give them all a big hand. And you don't throw the thing on the floor. But that shows that this is well built. I just tested it. Once again, thank you, veterans, for everything you've done. Be sure and sign up over here. Anybody that wants to, you can join the Warbirds of America. You don't have to own an airplane. You don't have to fly an airplane. You just have to have an interest. So come join us. We have fun. Thank you.